Hi, this is Roxanne again, ready to share a story with you. This story reminds me of some of my church friends, so it goes out to them. That would be Hannah, Josiah, and Elijah. Not that they acted all like this, but I know they take a lot of road trips, so they came to mind. My Brother's a Pain in the Backseat. It's by Bulla, and it's illustrated by Laronde. And I hope you enjoy it. When I was 10 years old, my pesky brother CJ drove me crazy every chance he got. He made my life difficult because he was younger. He could get away with anything. Since I was the oldest of 3 boys and 2 girls, I'd get blamed for everything, even things I didn't do. My parents said things like, "At your age, Dale, you should know better. You're the oldest." CJ took advantage of me because I was the oldest. He especially liked to blow spitballs at me. If I barely touched him, he screamed that I was beating him up, and I couldn't do anything about it because I was the oldest. My mother would say, "Overlook him. He's your little brother." And CJ would smile. It happened over and over, even on vacations. When we were supposed to help with the suitcases, he'd whine. "They're too heavy." So I'd have to take them. When CJ did carry something, he'd drop it. Then I'd have to go get it. I'll never forget one special trip. The car was loaded down. The 2 little ones, Sissy and Jonathan, climbed into the front seat with Mom and Dad. CJ and my sister Janet hopped into the back seat with me. Daddy cleared his voice. "Kids, don't forget the rules in the car." He counted off rule number 1. Hush up in the back seat. We all chimed in. I was always quiet. I knew the rules. "Okay," Daddy said. "What is rule number 2? Don't fight over the seats," we all called out. We never fought over seats in my daddy's car. We each had our own spot, and we sat there every time. I always sat in the back seat next to the door, behind my mother. I read books to entertain myself because our old 53 Chevy had no radio. When I was 10, most cars didn't have radios. My sister Janet always sat in the middle next to me. She put her feet on the hump because she had short legs. She spent her entire trip working puzzles, especially dot to dot and maze puzzles. She loved to put her pencil on a maze puzzle where it said "Start here" and try to find her way out of the maze. But if we hit a bump, her pencil would shoot across the page. Then she'd have to erase and start over again. My brother CJ sat next to the other door behind Daddy. He never bought books or puzzles. Instead, he spent his time bothering me. Well, I guess if you don't have anything to entertain yourself, right, you might wind up getting into trouble. On this trip, all of us kids settled down as the car hummed along the road. I quietly read my books while Janet worked on her puzzles. In a little while, CJ slowly eased his hand into his pocket and pulled out a little alligator clip. It was so small I didn't notice it. It was shaped like a tiny clothespin and made of stainless steel with sharp needle teeth. Daddy had told him not to get those clips out of the toolbox, but CJ had his pocket full of them anyway. Soon he squeezed the clip open and slipped it around my sister's back, all the way over to my side of the car. That's when I felt something sharp pinch. I jumped and I screamed, "Ow!" My daddy pulled off the road and stopped the car. He turned around and stared at us in the back seat. Then he growled, "The next time that happens, it'll be the last time it happens." I just kept quiet. CJ shrugged his shoulders and said, "I didn't do nothing." That's what he always said. Daddy pulled the car back on the road. We were back on vacation. When my arm stopped hurting, I went back to reading my books. Janet went back to working her puzzles. But in a little while, you guessed it, CJ slipped his hand back into his pocket. This time he took out a long alligator clip with a strong spring. Again, he reached behind my sister's back, and where I was sitting, and ow! He got me again in the same spot. All at once, Daddy stomped on the brakes. The car groaned as it went into a four-wheel slide and stopped. We peeled ourselves off the back of the front seat. Our old car didn't have seat belts. Then something else happened. Daddy did not say a word. My heart pounded as he got out. He stepped slowly to the back of the car. He opened CJ's door, reached into the back seat, and took my brother out. Daddy lifted CJ up in the air. My brother's eyes got bigger and bigger as his feet dangled above the ground. His mouth dropped open, but no words came out. Daddy gritted his teeth. "Christopher James, I don't want to hear a word out of you for the next 30 minutes. And keep your hands to yourself. Got it?" With tears in his eyes, CJ nodded as Daddy put him back in the car and closed the door. We drove off. My brother sobbed softly. I grinned to myself. Daddy finally got it right. He finally got the right one. After all those years, I finally experienced justice. It felt wonderful. We were back on vacation. As we drove, my arm stopped hurting and I went back to reading my books. Janet went back to working her puzzles, but CJ kept sniffling. His lips trembled as he finally asked, "Mama, is 30 minutes up yet?" My mother looked at her watch. "Yes, it has been about 30 minutes. But don't make a bunch of noise and bother your father while he's driving. He has to watch the road." But, CJ whimpered. "Daddy, you know when you stopped the car back there and you took me out of the car and you held me up in the air? My shoes fell off." My daddy immediately pulled off the road again and stopped. I thought I saw steam coming out of his ears as he turned around in his seat. He yanked off his hat and glared straight at my brother. "Why in the world didn't you tell me?" "You told me not to say nothing," CJ answered innocently. I knew Daddy was trapped. For once, my brother had done exactly what he was told. He hadn't said a word. "We'll have to go back and get your shoes," Daddy fussed. "Without those shoes, you'll be barefoot the rest of vacation, CJ. We can't afford to buy you another pair." Daddy jerked the steering wheel around and pulled the gear shift down. The car spun around and left burned rubber marks on the road. We tore back 30 miles to get those shoes. Luckily, CJ's shoes were still there besides the road. Of course, they had been flattened and covered with tire tracks. My daddy got out of the car picked up the shoes, and threw them in the back seat. We were on vacation again. Camp barefoot. Camp rules, no shoes, have fun. From then on, whenever we got into the car to go somewhere, my daddy never told us to hush up again. All he ever said was, "You'd better remember those shoes." And we all knew exactly what he meant. So mom, or mom and dad, or whoever is sharing this story with their children, you might want to talk about the likenesses and differences about some of your vacations, maybe about the car. What did the car not have way back in the day that your car does have? How is that different? What are things you do when you go on vacation on a road trip to make your trip interesting? How did the dynamics in this family resemble yours, or how are they different? Maybe you might want to write a story about your vacation and add your characters and your family and have some dialogue going on. Again, this is just something you could do with a book, or you can just enjoy it. Thank you, and I hope you're staying safe and staying home. God bless y'all. Bye.